Okay, so Whispers there with And the Beat Goes On. Now, what have our athletes been up to this morning? We're talking to Jamaican Olympian Yona Night Wisdom, who's going to be talking to us about the sport of diving and how it is that, he's staying fit within the comfort of his home during what has essentially been a very difficult time for training for them. Yona, good morning. Welcome to Smile Jamaica. How are you?
Very good, thank you. What's you?
Morning, Yoda.
Usually this time of morning you'd be at the pool now?
Actually, yeah, no, I'd normally be at the pool right now, although I'm based in the UK, so it's actually convenient for early morning shows over there, because it's 1 p.m. right now over here, so, I didn't have to wake up too early to come on.
Okay. And have you been there for the duration of this pandemic since the start?
Yeah, I've been at home for the last, 13 weeks now. It's gone quite quickly, to be fair, and we've had to obviously adapt everything that we do from a training perspective. It's been tough. The first few weeks were challenging, kind of coming to terms with the reality of it. But I'm kind of used to it now. But I'm itching to get back to the pool and into the water and just get back to diving.
How have you kind of amended that training schedule? Because I saw a video in social with a Russian Olympic swimmer, I think it was, who was using her, what you call that thing, her island in the kitchen as her pool. So she would lie on the island and her core would be off the island, and she was doing the breaststroke. I think her husband was holding her feet. And that was her routine every day. How have you had to switch things up and adjust in light of what's been happening with COVID in terms of your training?
Well, we normally do a lot of land training anyway. So in a normal session, we'd probably do about an hour to an hour and a half in the gym before we get into the pool for about an hour. So we've basically just had to take the things that we normally do in the gym and adapt them to home. There's a lot of things that I can do. I managed to take a few pieces of equipment away from the pool, like a Swiss ball, a few weights, some TheraBands, and a crash mat. So I've been able to do, the majority of what we normally do in the land side of training, which is good because I can continue working on, a lot of the things that are weaknesses for me. So I've just tried to keep that up as much as possible, but obviously we're missing the pool element, which is a huge element to the training. But then that being said, we don't have any competitions coming up, so we don't necessarily need to be training that side of it. Building the foundations that we can do from a conditioning perspective and a flexibility perspective is almost just as important at this moment in time, knowing that we've got 6-7 months until our next potential competition.
It's been a while, Yona, that you've represented Jamaica, and I'm sure you've answered this question many times. You had an opportunity to represent a number of countries. I know your dad is from Jamaica, your mom is from Barbados. Why did you choose Jamaica?
Jamaica was the standout choice for me at the time. Obviously, for me, with Great Britain, it was extremely challenging and very unlikely that I'd be able to represent them to a high level, just because there are so many other good divers, and I don't necessarily fit the mold of a diver with my height. I certainly can't do some of the difficult dives that some of the British guys do, but what I lack in that, I gain in execution, and I'm pretty confident in the way that I can execute my dives. And then the choice was down to Barbados and Jamaica, and it just came down to the fact that Jamaica has a very strong stature in sport, I think, with a lot of, what athletes have done in track and field. Obviously, the easy name is Usain Bolt, but Shelly-Ann, Asafa, Johan, all those kind of athletes, they've put Jamaica on the map in sport, and it became obvious that, representing Jamaica could help me build a profile that others couldn't necessarily do. And, I can try and use that to help me get as far as possible in diving, but also hopefully then introduce a new sport to Jamaica that has never really been done before to a high level. And I'd love to be able to use my career to, promote something like that happening on the island.
Yep. Where did the fascination for diving come from?
It just came from doing it over a number of years. I started in 2004 when I was 9 years old. I got picked up through a talent identification program. I happened to be really good at it through my background in gymnastics and swimming, and I just did it, and I loved the feeling of flying through the air, the feeling of executing a perfect dive. I made a lot of good friends. I went on a few international competitions quite early on. Only I think less than 2 years into my diving career, I'd done an international competition just representing my club at the time. So just the general enjoyment of the sport. I think it's a very fun sport. It's very, very friendly. I go to an international event and, well, obviously we won't be allowed to do that so much now, but I'll say hi to everyone and give hugs to everyone and show a lot of love to all the people from different countries, even though we're competing against each other. We can't necessarily directly affect how other divers perform. So, it's just a lot of love, and it's a great sport to be a part of, in my opinion.
Yep. Did you swim competitively before you started to dive? Or you went straight to diving?
No, my parents just took me to swimming lessons when I was young. It's funny. There's obviously the stereotype that black people don't necessarily like water, and it's funny that islands such as Barbados and Jamaica are surrounded by water, but neither of my parents were taught how to swim from a young age. And I think my mum had an incident when she was traveling around Europe where she almost drowned in a lake, and she didn't want me to not have that life skill. So she took me to swimming lessons from like the age of 2. I didn't last very long in swimming, but I just learned the skill, which for her was very important for me to learn, and it worked out very well when I eventually.
Have you taught her how to swim since?
Well, no, she learned as I learned. She learned. It wasn't just me in the water. She would take me to the swimming pool on the weekend, things like that. When I was growing up, so she learned how to swim since. I still don't think my dad knows how to swim. Although my dad's 75 now, so I don't think he necessarily needs that skill anymore.
That ship has sailed.
Simone already asked you about preparation and stuff. When do you get back to real preparation? Because I think the World Cup is in February. Am I right?
That's correct. The World Cup is in February in Tokyo. Assuming that everything can go back to normal by that time, we still don't really know. In the UK, in Scotland, where I'm based, we don't know when the pool is going to reopen and when I'm going to be able to go back to anything near normal in terms of my training routine back at the pool. So we've just got to wait it out. Hopefully it might be in the next month or maybe 2 months. But as I say, we just don't know. But as I've said, I've tried to use this period of time as well as possible to continue working on some of the foundations. That means that when I do get back to the pool, I can kind of hit the ground running, and I don't have to start building from the bottom again. I can just hit and go and get ready for whenever my next competition is, whether that is the end of this year. There could be a competition at the end of this year, or it could even happen that my first competition is World Cup, and we know how important that one is. So whenever it comes, I've got to be ready for it.
So you're physically conditioning, that's great. But you've gone so long without competition. Competitions have been put off. And a lot of, what keeps athletes doing what they do is the power of your mind, right? Because you guys compete at such incredible levels that if your mind is not in the game, it's done before you even touch that diving board. How are you dealing with that part of it, and how are you gonna, when you get back and you're physically prepared, how will you ensure that the nerves don't get you, that you're not worried about the rust, quote unquote, that might be there? Or are you concerned about any of that, or are you dealing with that as well, even as you prepare your body?
I think I'm only concerned about the first competition back, because that could be a bit ropey, getting back into it. And hopefully, as I say, we'll have a few competitions before the World Cup. And I know that in training, we'll definitely do a lot of competition preparation. There are ways that we can do that just in training, although it doesn't quite replicate the same vibes, but it can do the job. But I'm watching a lot of past competitions. I've been reminiscing on the Olympics from 2016, watching those events, and whilst I'm watching it, I'm trying to get into my own mind of how I would feel in that situation, and just trying to think about what I would focus on when I get on the board and how I control those nerves. So I've been working on it in that way. And then also I've been doing quite a bit of imagery as well, and visualization, which is very, very useful. And I'm trying to vary that as much as possible. So visualizing about executing dives in training, and also visualizing about executing dives in competition, because they're two very different things, and I think I've got to work on both. And there's a lot more that I can do. I've been trying to not overdo it during this period of time, because I don't need to overload myself with it. But as long as I can kind of keep things ticking over, as I say, once I get back into the pool, things might have changed, things might be different, and then I'll have to adapt in terms of my body and in terms of each and every dive. So I'll have to adapt my visualization to that as well. And then just pick it up from there.
Awesome.
All right, Yona, thank you so much. I congratulate you on what you've achieved so far. And hopefully the next time we speak, we will be speaking with the world champion, Yona Knight-Wisdom. Thank you so much. Be safe and look after yourself and your family, all right?
Very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Yona Knight-Wisdom, Olympian.